Hey guys, this is JP's LEGO Reviews. Today, I'm going to be going through what size of LEGO set is better for LEGO investing, large or small sets. Now, this is the 5th video in my series on how to invest in LEGO, so let's break it down. Now, the 4 things I'm going to be going through today are the pros and cons of large sets, the pros and cons of small sets, what's important to you as an investor, and finally, what LEGO set size is right for you. And here are the pros of large LEGO sets. The first good thing about large LEGO sets are you don't need to do as much research to find each investment opportunity. Let's say you have $200 and you split them into 2 sets instead of 10 sets. You only need to figure out which 2 sets will be good for investment, and that's a lot of time saved compared to having to look up 10 sets that you think will be good for investing. It's a big time saver when it comes to just looking up how many of what set, and also just, if each large set will be a good investment. It's still a lot less time you're going to have to spend simply because there's just less sets you'd usually need to buy than with small sets. Also, a good thing about large LEGO sets are there's less inventory to manage. Instead of having to check up on, say, 50 LEGO sets in an inventory each month, or figuring out each month if 50 sets have increased in value, you only maybe would need to do it with maybe 5 to 10, and that could be a big time saver for someone that has limited time resources but doesn't mind spending so much money. Also, it's just less of a hassle when it comes to the sale of a LEGO set. Now, what I mean by that is it's easier to organize the sale of a LEGO set. Instead of having to take pictures of 50 sets and manage 50 people wanting to buy the set, for if you had like a 50 set portfolio of all small sets, having only 5 to 10 large sets instead, you only have to eBay list, say, 5 to 10 sets, and then you may have to deal with up to 5 to 10 customers, depending on how many customers you actually get. But it's a lot better to kind of manage that than manage 50 customers and 50 eBay listings, as an example. But now, we'll look through the cons of large sets. Now, large sets can be good, but there are some downsides. Now, the first downside is they're harder to store. Now, because they're such massive boxes, you can't just store them anywhere, because the point of LEGO investing is to make sure that the LEGO box is actually in pristine condition. And with a big box like the Lion's Night Castle in front of you, which is actually a very large LEGO box, you would want to make sure that it doesn't get crumpled or scratched or anything like that. And because of this, you want to make sure that you store it in a safe location. But it's simply harder to find places where you can store these sorts of sets safely, simply because it's simply larger. And with a smaller wardrobe area where you could have easily fit a few small sets, you can't with a large set. The second issue with large sets are you may be putting too many of your eggs in one basket, and this can actually be very financially bad. Let's say you get $200, you spend $100 on 2 large sets, so it comes to $200 each, and then you have 10 sets that you buy for $20. Now, if you buy 2 $100 sets and one of them fails, well, that's half of your investment gone right there. That is 50% of your entire portfolio down the drain. Meanwhile, if one of your small sets fail, on the other hand, it's only a 10% loss, and that can easily be actually recuperated with the profits of the other 9 sets that you bought that are small. And because of this, simply buying too many large sets can make you basically put you in a riskier location where you could lose out on your investment. You could also do very well, but it's higher risk, higher reward for large and especially massive LEGO sets. Another downside, and I actually explained it already, is it's just more costly if the investment fails. And if your investment fails with a large set, it fails. Meanwhile, with the small set, if it fails, it can sort of be negotiable or sort of can be kind of overlooked if a lot of your other smaller sets also happen to do extremely well. And it's more complicated to ship the set. Now, it's easier to organize large Lego set sales, but it's actually more complicated once you're going to ship it. And the reason why is because of its size. Now, the size of the Lego sets, like the Lions Night Castle in front of you, is actually really big. Because of this, firstly, stores don't sell usually that large of shipping boxes. And if they do, you say buy it, it's going to be a bit more expensive, but then you actually have to ship it. And with postal services, they charge you based off how large you're shipping something. And it could be weight based too, depending on where you live, but it's either weight or the size of the box. But let's say, but it's actually kind of both. And because of this, your shipping costs could be a lot higher than what you expected, and it could even be more complicated to ship the Lego set than expected, simply because of the enormity of a Lego box that you own. Now, let's look at the pros of small sets. Now, what are some pros of the small set? Well, the first pro is it's cheaper to start investing with. Let's say you only have $150 to start with. Instead of, say, buying one big set, you could potentially buy maybe 5 smaller sets. And with just that little bit of money that you've invested in, you already have a much more diversified portfolio, and it basically means that you're already starting better off than if you were to get one big set. And going off that, it's easier to store than large sets, simply because, let's say you have a wardrobe that you have a bit of space but not too much space. You could easily store those small sets in that wardrobe space comfortably. Meanwhile, with a large set, you would have to store it elsewhere, and potentially in a place where it can be more affected the box can be more affected with erosion or with water or with just damage of other kinds. Also, it's actually easier to create a diversified portfolio of sets. Now, if you say you want to have a portfolio of 10 sets in general, let's say with a smaller Lego set, you could easily do that with, say, maybe $300 to $400. Meanwhile, with large Lego sets, you would have to spend maybe at least $2,500 to have a diverse portfolio of sets. And because of this, you could easily do better investing with smaller Lego sets and maybe even get bigger rewards, simply because of the fact that it's easier to buy lots of variety of small sets than lots of variety of big sets. And finally, it's more likely that the collective investment would actually succeed. Now, the reason is, let's say in both of these examples, let's say you buy $500 worth of, say, 10 small sets and then $500 worth of 2 large sets. If one set each fails, for the large set, you would have lost half of your investment straight away. Meanwhile, if you lost one set out of the 10 set portfolio that you have of small sets, it's only a 10% loss. Basically, if your other 9 sets do very well, they'll actually negate the effects of the loss of the other set. Meanwhile, no matter how much you sell the other massive large set for, unless it's stupidly profitable, then your collective investment would actually take a bit of a hit. So with small sets, the collective investment would be a lot more likely to succeed. And finally, with the cons of small sets, firstly, they are just more difficult to acquire, simply because you have to take more time to research which small set is right for you. So if you're wanting to buy, say, 10 small sets instead of 2 large sets, it will take you a lot more time to look up which themes of sets do you want to buy, which pricing do you want to buy your set at, or, even if you figured it out, waiting for the set to come on sale, or figuring out if you really want to invest in the set after all because of a rumor coming out next year. There's just a lot more factors and a lot more things you need to think about when acquiring an investment portfolio for small sets. Also, there's just more sets to manage after retirement to see which sets are doing well. Instead of having to look up the success of say 5 sets, you may have to look up the success of say 50 sets. And because of this, you may be a lot more stressed simply because you have to go through 50 different LEGO sets and see which ones are doing well and which ones aren't, compared to maybe a large set portfolio where there's only maybe 5 or 10 sets to manage. Also, it's more complicated to ship the sets too because of the amount of stuff being shipped. Now, let's say in 1 week you have sold 11 sets. Now, you would have to buy 11, or you either buy or you have 11 separate boxes to store the set with the appropriate like protective equipment like bubble wrap and peanuts and all those other things. Then you have to pay 11 different fees for shipping, and then after that you would have to manage and deal with 11 different customers as you ship your order to them. So it's more complicated to do everything when it comes to the selling phase, but you probably could get a better profit out of doing an investment with small sets instead of large sets. Now, I'm going to ask this as a rhetorical, well, it's not actually rhetorical, but an important question. What's important to you as a LEGO investor? The reason why is because if there's something that matters to you more than something else, this can determine what size of LEGO set you should buy. Now, if you're low on budget, let's say you only have $100, you're not doing super well and you just want to, or maybe you just want to dip your toe into LEGO investing, then a small set portfolio is the way to go. Now, the few reasons why this is better is because it can be better diversified. With $100, instead of maybe buying 1 large set, you could buy 5 small sets. And what it means is you have much more variety when it comes to your investment, so that let's say that one theme happens to take off and you bought 1 set there, you have something that does really well. But if you have something that fails, well, you still have 4 other sets that could still do really well. Meanwhile, if you bought one $100 set, everything rides on that set doing really well, because if it does well, it does well, and if it fails, it fails. Now, also, because of this, there are more chances of the investment succeeding, simply because there are a greater number of LEGO sets, and that's sort of negating the risk factor of starting LEGO investing with having more product to hopefully have some of it increase quite a bit in value. Also, you need less funds to start LEGO investing compared to large sets, because let's say you want to buy 5 sets in general, you can do that easily with a lower budget from $100 to $200. But if you wanted to do that with large sets, you would need to spend anything from $500 to possibly $1,500. And if you want to do a diversified portfolio well, you just need less money for small sets simply because they're easier to acquire. But now, let's look at space. What if space is your main problem? Not finances and not time. Well, you really should consider a small set portfolio, because it's better for this again. Now, small sets take up physically less space, like the boxes are like 3 or 4 times smaller than large sets, and it could be a lot more, but that's just on average. Also, it's easier to store 10 small sets in 1 container than 1 large set respectively. Let's say you buy 10 kind of small sets, you can easily put them in a large sort of plastic container. Meanwhile, you actually can't do the same thing with 1 large set because it may not fit, and because of that, you may have to store the large set in a much riskier location, like just in a bedroom where it could be hit with wardrobes and all that sort of thing. But if you're able to store 10 small sets into a shipping container, not a shipping container, but a plastic container, then it protects the set a lot more. Also, there's more value per square meter or square foot depending on where you come from, simply because you're able to cram in more value or more LEGO in the same amount of space with small sets than you can with large sets. And finally, for shipping off the sets, the shipping boxes and equipment is smaller too. So it doesn't take up as much space if you already have the boxes or the bubble wrap prepared, so that you can just wrap it up and then you can stack the boxes you're going to ship it off in, maybe in the same wardrobe or somewhere else that's still relatively protected, instead of having a massive box you have to put a massive Lego set in and then having to just leave it out in the open and hope that nothing bad happens. And finally, there's the time constraint. What if you're out of time? What if you don't have much time? What if you're a very busy person? Well, for you, a large set portfolio is better, and here's why. It takes less time to research each set to purchase. Let's say you're trying to figure out with, say, $500 what you should do. Instead of maybe having to buy potentially 10 to 20 small sets, you only have to buy maybe 2 to 3 large sets. And that cuts a lot of time into figuring out, okay, which set do I want, which one should I avoid, and which one should I go with. And because you have less sets you have to research for originally, it'll just save you quite a lot of time figuring out what actually you should buy. Also, it takes less time to purchase the portfolio, because let's say you're buying 3 sets from 3 separate sort of retailers. You just buy from one, then the other. But let's say you're trying to buy 10 to 15 sets. They all come from all different places. You may be spending up to 3 or 4 times longer purchasing the Lego set, simply because you're just trying to look for the deals too. And it also will take up a lot more time for you just looking for deals too, simply because you're waiting for a good sale to buy the set that you want to buy. Meanwhile, with a large set, you only have to keep track of maybe purchasing 2 to 3 sets at a maximum. Also, it takes less time to resell the portfolio since there are less items. It takes less time to set the portfolio up on eBay and to take the photos and make the listing. It takes less time to deal with the customers and to buy the boxes and to make sure that they're in shipping order. And it takes less time to even take to the post office, for example, and ship off, simply because you have less products to process. And if this is important to you, if you're out of time, but you don't have to worry about money or space, then a large set portfolio is better. So, in conclusion, what size of Lego set should you invest in? The answer for every single one of you is, it depends. There are too many variables for me to say which Lego set you should invest in is right for you or not, simply because I don't know your situation. If you're more time constricted, get a larger set portfolio. If you're very concerned about your budget, go small. Or if you have less space, then go small again. Or you maybe have some other sort of considerations that I may have not covered that may apply just to you. Or maybe you want to do something, like, I'm not exactly sure what your situation is, but it highly depends. But these are the things that I've shown in the video that you need to consider before deciding if you should invest in large Lego sets or small Lego sets. Now, that is it. Now, let me know what your opinion is on this video, and let me know if you invest in large or small sets, or maybe you invest in both. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button. If you want to see more content just like this, please subscribe. I hope you guys have a prosperous day and keep building.